for the audience because I know you're not going to get any of that.
Then everybody's gonna just become exposed to like how much I don't know. Okay.
Cool.
All right, everybody. It's good to see you all again. Today we're going to be starting with attachment 2.0. So if you were in the last episode on attachment, I think it was episode 5 or something like that. We went through all of it. So if you want to get the full depth of attachment, go back and watch that one. But if you want like specific tools, I do have a plan for this. I was like, let's do recap just a bit and then dive deep into like the interventions. Like how do you actually heal different styles of attachment? From a very like broad level, like I like shadow work and all that stuff, all the way to practical, like what do I do on a date if I have anxious attachment? And then just whatever is the fun garden variety. But Vinny had an idea to start this whole thing too, which is begging.
Yeah. Subscribe, follow us. For the love of God, we're spending our own money for this.
Yes. we're doing this whole thing and we enjoy it and we enjoy pushing stuff out. But, like people say in those YouTube videos, like smash that subscribe button. Like we want you guys to do that for us. So if you're here, just subscribe.
Please.
Not because we're good. We know we're pretty good, but just do it.
Yeah, we know we're good. No. Yeah. But it would be nice it feels like we're kind of getting a little bit of momentum, but it would be nice to, find a way to make this more of a long-term thing because I think it's helpful and, it's nice to do something outside of our private practice.
Yeah, certainly. We want to keep doing this. So send us a parasail, send us some cash. Not really. Just subscribe.
Cash app.
Cool. All right, well, I'll start up with, for people that are tuning in for the first time to attachment 2.0, as a recap, you got the 4 different styles of attachment. You've got secure attachment, which is the best one, like positive view of self, positive view of others. You got anxious attachment, negative view of self, positive view of others. Then you have avoidant attachment, which is positive view of self, negative view of others. And then you have fearful attachment, which is sort of like one of the tough roles of being in between. Somebody online said this really good, but it's sort of like you have a very stone cold picture of what anxious attachment can look like, and then you have a very like stone tablet version of what avoidant attachment can look like. But fearful attachment is so nuanced. It's almost as if anxious and avoidant people had kids and it just turned out like all these different varieties of what fearful attachment could look like. I would say just one huge takeaway from what the different styles of attachment can look like. With anxious attachment, you truly find your pole of acceptance from the words, thoughts, and facial expressions of other people. With avoidant, you're finding your trust and independence in yourself. And so you regulate by being alone versus anxious, you regulate through other people giving you that feedback. But I don't know if you have any more thoughts on that recap, just to start.
No, that sounds like pretty, you know what it is? It's kind of like, we all have images in our head of these things, like when we think of an anxiously attached person, like Michael Scott from The Office, when we think of an avoidantly attached person, we think of whatever, you have your versions of it. And sometimes those versions are accurate. And other times, through stuff like what we do, it kind of challenges your idea of, oh, actually, I didn't think someone can look like that and be considered avoidantly attached, but that actually makes a lot of sense. So it's really about what kind of image you have in your head of what this person feels like. And you'd be surprised if you kind of do the work on yourself. The book Attach is really good for that. You can get a sense of what you actually are versus maybe how you might come across.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, that's really interesting because there's just so many misconceptions of like anxious and avoidant. Like I've had so many clients that were just dead set, like I'm anxiously attached. I'm always prioritizing other people and all this other stuff. But we get in a session and we get underneath and they have this preconception of what avoidant and anxious looks like. And we find that they're actually avoidantly attached. They've been carrying responsibility, not because they want approval from other people, but because they feel like if they let their problems loose, they're actually a burden to other people. So there's a lot of nuance to it for sure.
This is not to because of my T-shirt. This is my dog Eddie.
Oh yeah,
this is my dog Eddie. He's on a T-shirt. My wife got it for me for Christmas, and I love it. He's also on my arm. But the reason I bring up, I was thinking of I feel like people who have attachment styles that are anxious or avoidant, they tend to gravitate towards pets. Because you want to know what a pet can't do? I mean, as long as you lock them in your house, is they can't run away. And I feel like the purity of that relationship is it gives you a sense of connection that you have convinced yourself you can't get with others.
Yeah, and this is super random, but
I'm just
when
derailing this immediately.
I love that. But with like pets and attachment and also like autism, like there's a whole lot of studies that show that it's more likely that somebody on the autism spectrum will like pets. And I think there's a reason for that. And it's that that's such a consistent sort of creature in your life that'll keep coming back. Whereas with like autism, you're like, I'm not sure how to read social cues. I don't know how to maintain relationships. People just seem to come and go and I don't know why. And all of that is erased with a pet. And I think that's really cute and cool.
It is. It's like it gives you a little sense of security while still being able to connect. But you know what's funny? Speaking of comments online, one of the TikToks I did, I cannot remember which it is, but I remember the comment, and it was like it was something about like people having a fear of abandonments and blah 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 blah. And
Yeah.
someone was like, "Yeah, but they do leave. Like I have a lot of evidence that they will leave if I express my needs." And my reaction to that was like, "Yeah, but maybe you're not being selective enough with who you let in." You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
of course you're going to be surrounded by people who are taking from you if you're not discriminating in the beginning. But if you have a good ability to identify these people who are taking more than they're willing to give, you won't create the reality that everyone in my life is selfish and I can't express my needs because they will leave.
Yeah, that's such a cool point. We could just jump right into it
Yeah.
because, like, with attachment, you grow up in an environment as a child where maybe your needs weren't met, and that leads to this avoidant attachment outcome, or maybe your needs were put to the side, so that led to anxious attachment. And then later in life, you find yourself in relationships where people just are disrespecting your needs, and you're like you said, if I actually put myself forward, things don't work out. And I think that one of the reasons is because we sort of have this process where we recreate the conditions for how we've started off as a child. So, like, one example might be like a lot of clients with anxious attachment will say, why do I keep running into jerks? Like, why am I constantly in relationships with like emotionally unavailable people? And why is it that I'm attracted to emotionally unavailable people? And I'll just start asking them questions and getting to know them. And as we talk, they start talking about the worst things that they hate about these emotionally unavailable people. And they're like, they don't pay attention to my needs. They don't really respect my boundaries. They seem to prioritize all of their own feelings over mine. And they take care of themselves. And when I'm like speaking with them, I point out like, hey, how do you treat yourself? And for the most part, a lot of anxiously attached people don't respect their own needs. They aren't willing to inconvenience others to have their own needs met. And so then they get really frustrated when someone else is unwilling to inconvenience themselves to meet their needs. So in reality, both of you, the emotionally unavailable person and the anxiously attached person in the relationship, are both sort of tag teaming to validate the reality of the anxiously attached person to say, my wants and needs are not important. So you have to first change that internal core belief to slowly start fixing and shifting your chemistry with people and how you start to attract certain people into your life. Like, it's all connected.
I 100% agree. Everything you say, I totally agree with what you're saying. That's really really good point. And you're right. Like everyone looks at psychology in this sequence of I have this experience and then I develop this belief, and that's how we develop our perception of the world. But the truth is it's a back and forth. It's like I have this experience in childhood where my needs aren't met, and then when I express my needs, I get abandoned, and therefore, as an adult, I seek people out that kind of confirm that, which then reinforces the belief I already had. And then any example to the contrary in their life is minimized, and any example that agrees with their preconceived notion is used as evidence. It's like, gee, I told you.
Yep. And I like that idea of that minimization and magnification of certain things too. Like, that's what we do with our experience. It's like the "see, I told you" is what keeps you stuck sometimes.
That's a good title for like a book.
The "see, I told you" is what keeps
No,
you
it's a bad
stuck.
title. Forget it.
You just sit me on it, man. I'm with it.
But like I just think this whole attachment thing is so popular because people are finally starting to question something that was not questioned for a long time, which is, can things get better if I analyze my own beliefs about relationships? And the answer is it can if you change who you associate with. But if you associate with the same people, you're just going to reinforce the beliefs you already have.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's what they show in the literature. It's that if you start to build new attachment with secure people and then you start to work towards secure attachment yourself in these relationships, then attachment is mendable and it can change and it does. So there's a lot of hope there in that too.
There's hope, and I think part of understanding kind of why attachment insecurity develops is by looking at people's misunderstanding of what they can control. If you misunderstand your own sense of control, you're going to become a people pleaser and minimize your needs for the sake of keeping people close, because in your head that's the way you maintain control over someone leaving you. But if you truly understand that the only control you have is advocating for your needs, and everything after that is not your fault. If someone leaves, it's not your fault. If someone stays, it's not your fault, right? Like, if you can understand where your control stops, you will be a lot more able to heal from whatever shit you grew up with.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the main cognitive distortion for anxious attachment, I would say, is personalization and mind reading. Because the shift is always, what did I do wrong? How can I make myself better? When in reality, there's a whole lot of stuff happening external that's way out of your control. So it's not about like making sure that you communicate with this person perfectly. And yet, if you constantly focus on that in relationships, you're going to walk away as like, that's the factor that went wrong. Or you're going to even just say, oh, I finally communicated perfectly and it still went wrong. Like, look at my fate.
I use this example and it never hits with clients, so of course I'm going to use it on this podcast. But there's a movie. Have you ever seen? The answer is no. But there's a movie called The Edge of Tomorrow.
I've actually seen that.
Really?
No, I haven't. I was like, I'm definitely going to see this one. Go ahead.
There's a movie called Edge of Tomorrow, which I think is also called Live, Die, Repeat, depending on what country it's in. But essentially, it's Tom Cruise, and he has to like get to this end of. It's like he has to get to the end of this sequence of events in order to save the world or whatever. And every time he dies, he like starts from the beginning. But every time he dies, he learns about, oh, okay, a bullet's coming this way, so I have to duck. I'm oversimplifying it, but you get it. So the movie is just like him dying over and over again, but getting a little bit further each time. And he has to like perfectly get through this whole thing to save the world at the end. But I always use that as kind of a fallacy. It's kind of a fantasy we have that if I can just take 2 steps to the left and 1 to the right, duck here, not advocate for my needs there, then the relationship will work out. And it's a fallacy because you always end up feeling more responsible than is appropriate for maintaining something that's not completely your responsibility to maintain. And so the mistake we make is this, I have to be perfect in order for things to work out. But the truth is like you, like for instance, we have a good friendship. And so I know that if I piss you off, that it's not going to end anything.
Right.
But because I'm not stuck in the fallacy of I have to be perfect or he's going to leave. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah, we have these preconceived notions of like what it takes to make something work, stuff that automatically feels bad. And with people with anxious attachment, you're reading the safety of a relationship based on people's reactions. And usually deep within the shadow of someone with anxious attachment is anger. It's this feeling of if someone's angry at me, I failed. Or if I get angry at someone, then I'm this Neanderthal that's failed. And so when it comes to relationships and therapy, when you're working with anxious attachment, it's really important to try to pull anger outside of the shadow and say, hey, this emotion is not bad. But what happens most of the time with anger and people pleasing and anxious attachment is you suppress anger so much that people start to walk over your boundaries a whole lot. And then when people start to walk over your boundaries, there's this level of unawareness of this boiling anger underneath. And that gets suppressed because, no, I'm a kind person. And as that starts to boil and boil and boil, it blows up at 100%. And you're like, wow, see, I told you anger's bad. I'm like, well, no, well, yes, but anger at 100% when it's blowing up like a volcano is bad. But had you expressed it at a 0% and acknowledged that you had wants and needs when somebody crossed your boundaries, you both have the control to express it well, and people have the ability to respond well to it, and that builds a new relationship. So I think that's a huge part in trying to figure out how to heal attachment wounds, right? With anxious attachment.
Yeah, it's so funny because like there was a study of observing chimps in like their natural habitat, and what they found was that the chimps with an angry disposition were less messed with than chimps without an angry disposition. So, for instance, a chimp that has this kind of agitated personality was nobody was coming to steal their food as much. You know, the other chimps were not trying to take things or invade its space as much because the angry chimp was conditioning them to create a boundary, stay away. And so even at the level of like primates, anger can serve a function of saying like, hey, if you cross this line, there's going to be a problem. But when you suppress your anger, like you're saying, all of a sudden these needs and these emotional boundaries become available to others, and you feel exhausted and burnt out in the process.
Yeah, exactly.
So it serves as a protective factor.
Exactly. Like that sphere of protection. Like it's all the way back to that anger episode where if you suppress anger,
Nice
then
plug.
you're starting to lose. Was that
All the way about that anger episode.
all about the anger episode?
was a good one.
I'm like, yeah, that was a good one.
I like that one.
I feel like we're just like we're starting to build like a library of episodes,
Yeah.
which is like super cool.
Like when a client references, like, I remember when you said this, I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think we think about each other more than we think about ourselves sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm just like, man, remember you said this, and yeah,
You're like,
but-
no, I don't.
Yeah, but anger gets a bad rep with anxious attachment. What about avoidant attachment? What kind of strategies would you say
I
are
feel like
helpful?
people with avoidant attachment are like, they come across as like super cool. Like, oh, you know, like nothing phases me. But it's their way of convincing themselves that they don't experience the emotional vulnerability that comes with connection. You know what I mean? Like they try to find a way to needle the thread between like connecting with someone while still keeping them at an arm's distance. And it kind of solves none of those issues. You're kind of both not connected and still in relationship with someone, so no one's satisfied.
Yeah, exactly. And that goes all the way back to the from episode 5 on anxious attachment and avoidant attachment. There's this experiment called the strain situation, where they studied kids and how they showed up with attachment. If you want to learn more about that experiment, watch episode 5. But in that experiment, they had these avoidant infants, and they would not be in tune with their emotional experience because, in the theory is that they were afraid that the mom or the secure base would not respond well to their needs. And so in relationships as adults, now you're approaching relationships with this sarcasm, with this like distance, all these jabs, and like this cool, like, I don't care. And you're hoping to manufacture connection through all those like light jabs, like at least my fist is touching your side kind of thing, like I said. and so with avoidant attachment, it's like you said, you get in the way of intimacy yourself, and you think these things are going to work, and yet these systems just don't work that way.
No, and I think the word care is the most fundamental thing, because I think any person with an attachment-related anxiety, whether it's anxious or avoidant, at the root of their fear is that people don't care enough. And I think that goes all the way back to what you were saying. At an infancy level, you come to learn that caring is more conditional than it should be. You know, caring when you're an infant should just be, I'm expressing distress, and in a predictable way, someone comes to soothe me. But when that doesn't happen, which is the birth of anxious or avoidant attachment, when that doesn't happen, all of a sudden, this little seed of doubt in your head develops of, do you care though? Do you care enough? And as an adult, this is something I did my dissertation on, you start to challenge people to see if they care. Like, for instance, if someone comes in from work and they don't kiss you immediately hello and they go straight to the bathroom, you're like, oh my God, they don't care about me. You start having these rules in your head of you would care if, and everything becomes symbolic gestures of, oh, you didn't get me the thing I wanted for my birthday, therefore you don't care. But at the root of it, you're constantly wondering if someone cares, and it's not normal to constantly wonder if someone cares unless someone fundamental in your life didn't care enough.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's what all the literature says. It's the parents of those kids that led the kids to feel that way in the experiment. It's from past experiences.
And they're just, but and when you're an adult, it's kind of like all under the surface. So it's like, you know, even I even remember like, you know, in my past, it's like so and so couldn't show up to a birthday, and I'm wondering, oh, maybe they don't care about me as much as I thought. But the problem is you're so focused on gestures and actions that you don't actually go back and just look at the relationship on a deeper level and go, of course they care.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's obvious that they care, but you have so much doubt that you can't just sit in that obviousness.
Yeah, and I think with avoidant attachment, it's that cause and effect sort of experience of, okay, wait a minute, I don't know if someone's going to meet my needs, so for me to exist with other people, I need to make sure I can meet my own needs first. And so it's sort of like this like New York mentality of like, if you're walking on the street and you get in my way and I walk past you and I bump into you, knock you on the ground, well, it's your fault you fell on the ground because you weren't responsible enough to get out of my way and to follow the already preset of rules. Like get all your stuff together so that we can be a fine operating system. And so I think in relationships, people with avoidant attachment actually have extreme capacity for empathy. And people think that people with avoidant attachment don't. But in reality, what's happening is the avoidant person is taking on a ton of responsibility and weight. And people might think, well, what do you mean? Like, avoidant people don't take responsibility. They blame other people. I'm like, well, yes, they blame other people, but they hold themselves to a standard of being polished, of like, I got to have my stuff together. I got all my ducks in a row. If you don't have your ducks in a row, now that means that you're irresponsible and your responsibility is going to fall on me. And so the only thing that keeps the avoidant person from showing and experiencing all that empathy with other people, at least that's what they believe, is people not taking responsibility for their own stuff. And another thing too is if the avoidant person actually started to give up some of that responsibility, they don't do it because they feel like it's weak. I can't just let my guard down in front of you because now that's going to be a burden on you. It's not because I'm selfish that I don't want to like share my problems with you. It's because I don't want to burden you. And it's a full distortion.
It's and that's why it's always centered. This is why I said, oh, you know, they try to play it cool. Like I got all my stuff in a row. It's the way they answer the question of do you care enough is they lower their own perception of caring. They're like, I don't care that much. You know, it's like an anxious attachment person, they're constantly going like, you need to care as much as I do. Like that's reassuring to you, reassuring to me. But an avoidantly attached person, they go, you need to care as little as I do. And that's how we solve this problem. But it's like you're missing the forest through the trees here because you're still fixated on caring enough and what that looks like.
Yeah. And I mean, that's sort of the issue. You start to build the glue of your relationships, not on that emotional like glue, but more of the objects of like, this is what I have. I have this.
You're building it on this and not this.
Yep.
You know, and for the listeners at home, I was pointing at my head and then my dog Eddie.
Eddie has secure attachment. If you really think about it, I mean, look at him.
This is a confident dog.
Right.
A standard poodle. Rescue, not really.
Rescued by fate.
Let's talk about this. I was thinking about this on earlier today. I was like, and I don't want this to be a competition. I don't want this to be mean. But I truly think I love my dog more than you love your dog. Do you agree?
No. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Why do you think I love my dog more than you love your dog?
I think that's a cognitive distortion.
Look at look at the objective evidence compared to you. What is your evidence?
My dog is avoidantly attached, so she doesn't want to be on TV. No, but that is a good argument, though. You got your dog on your shirt.
Just wanted to put you on the spot.
So Eddie has fearful attachment.
No, he is as secure as they come.
Oh yeah,
I've never seen a dog with better posture.
He does have good posture.
Right? It's weird.
He's good. He's either secure or avoidant.
His head's held up high. But I like that you're going into avoidant attachment because they come across like they care less than they do. And I think partners of avoidantly attached people, they can pick up on the artifice. They can pick up on the fact that an avoidantly attached person is saying one thing, but it feels different because they do feel deeply. They just have a hard time expressing it. And what they're saying is not necessarily what they're feeling because to say it is too vulnerable for them at this moment in their life, probably.
Yeah. And I mean, for that first part, what you said too, like usually when I go in a session with someone, the main cognitive distortion for anxious attachment, I'll say, is a lot of the mind reading and personalization, but also magnification of the issues. Because that's what the kids did in the strain situation. They yelled in mom's ear, like, look at how these issues, like, I'm going to connect with you. and reveal all of the pain I've had. And I might sprinkle a little extra on top because I don't want you to miss it. And I think that's actually not healthy, but more healthy than the avoidance strategy, which is minimization. And minimization to the core is, yeah, I scratched my leg, but it's not a big deal. And in the short run, that works for the avoidant person, because if you get scratched on the leg and you say it's fine and you just keep on playing, that adrenaline kicks in. You're fine. You start to play well. It works in the same way with emotions.
They broke up with me, so what? You
Yeah.
know?
And then when you do that over and over and over again, this minimization, you start to slowly turn into the person who doesn't get their car. You don't get an oil change for your car. You start to say, well, it's fine. Things are good enough. My life's good. My grandparents did fine without getting an oil change for their car. So I'll be fine. And you're like, I'm so privileged to even care about this thing. When in reality, your situation is privileged enough so that you don't have to minimize anymore. There's a whole world of freedom that comes from just accurately labeling your experience. But the avoidant person feels like that's weakness. And that's the first cognitive distortion to address, I found, with avoidant people.
I totally agree. They look at it as weakness, and I think if someone's watching this and they're like, fine, I'll give you that I'm avoidantly attached. But I think the other issue is when you spend your whole life convincing yourself it's weakness in order to throw yourself off the scent of, I just have a hard time being vulnerable, right? Like also this is something that our minds love to do, which is take a behavior, like let's say avoiding vulnerability, but package it in a nuanced belief that's a little more digestible. Like for instance, it's weakness, as opposed to vulnerability is not weakness. I just don't want to feel vulnerable, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the issue there though is you're constantly throwing yourself off the scent of even knowing what your needs are. And as you become an adult, you have lost the trail back to your needs. So the trail has become, when you're born, you are standing on the campsite of your needs. But as you get older and your attachment insecurity develops, you slowly kind of venture further away from your needs for your own safety. And that trail back to the campsite starts to grow over. And at some point, you kind of lose track of even where it is. And so you're an adult listening to our podcast, and you're like, that's all great, Jacob, but I don't even know what my needs fucking are. And it's because you have not ventured back to that campsite in years.
Wow. I really love that analogy, because it's just like picturing the grass growing. Like that's exactly what happens to avoidant people who wake up in their car one day, just not wake up, but they're just crying in their car and like, I don't know why I'm crying. There's just tears coming out. There's a scene playing on TV and I'm crying, but like I should be fine. It's like that path is sort of like brushed over or grown into a whole lot of like, I don't know what's happening there.
I'm more wondering why they're living in their car. Why are they waking up in their car?
I don't know why. When I picture an avoidant person, I either picture them in a car just crying and not knowing why, or and I think I don't know why I say they're living in their car,
but you know, I have some empathy for the people that are in relationship with avoidantly attached people, because I can see that those people have so much empathy and understanding that they know what's going on in the avoidantly attached person. They know that vulnerability is hard for them. And so they're kind of stuck between getting their own needs met and kind of pushing that avoidantly attached person to work on themselves versus accommodating what is a really hard experience for an avoidantly attached person, which is like, I don't feel safe when I'm vulnerable.
Yeah. I mean, this is a good question, but like, what advice would you give someone who's avoidantly attached in a relationship with someone who's anxiously attached?
Ooh, that's throwing me on the spot. You're giving yourself time to think. That's what you're doing.
I'm thinking about it too. Yeah.
To an avoidantly attached person?
Yeah. Oh, and yeah, let's start with that. I want to throw like 3 questions at you right now.
I think an avoidantly attached person is going to view their anxiously attached partner as annoying when that anxiously attached person is feeling insecure. But what I would say is, if you notice these moments when they're looking for you to do something you don't want to do, ask yourself, why don't I want to do it? Do I not want to show up for them because they're manipulating me? Or do I not want to show up for them because it makes me uncomfortable? And if the answer is it makes me uncomfortable, then that's your responsibility to work on, not theirs.
Yeah. Wow, that's good. That's good. And you would probably have that your couples therapist, you would have them together and just kind of point that out, right? Like, hey, let's see this. Let's make this an exercise of some sort.
Well, I think an anxiously attached person is probably going to seek over communication, whereas an avoidantly attached person is going to
Mm.
seek under communication. And it's like both have a point. It's like communication is important, but too much communication's not good. And I think it's so easy, and this happens with politics. It's so easy to see like your part of the truth, that their part of the truth is minimized. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
I think oftentimes that happens with those kinds of couples. It's like, yeah, but look what I'm saying here. Isn't this true? It's like, yes, that's true, and the other thing is true as well. It doesn't have to be mutually exclusive.
Yeah, certainly. And I would even say, like, in that kind of dynamic, that magnification and minimization that happens with anxious and avoidant, I think it's helpful at the beginning to create a safe space for the anxious person to yell it out, get all the emotions out, and let's see if we can just communicate, even if there's some flares of over communication in there. Who knows what? And then avoidant person, like, sit down and watch whatever, whatever feels more comfortable to start, and just pure acceptance. But hopefully, slowly through couples treatment, those two start to slowly merge into the middle of, like, okay, anxiously attached person, like, we hear you, we see you. Let's see if we can get an extreme accurate depiction without magnifying the experience. And hope for the best that someone hears you without having to yell. And then avoidantly attached person, let's see if we can not minimize, especially when it comes to your own flaws, and truly express, like, hey, let's just lean into it. And then hopefully they start to swap places, and then you get the anxiously attached person starts to look completely avoidant, and then the avoidant person, I'm just kidding. And then you get in the middle, you're both secure, hopefully.
This makes me think of like I feel like the root of all attachment issues is your self-worth is lower than it should be. You know, your self-worth is low because you've developed a belief that the only way people will stick around is if you minimize your needs for the sake of theirs. So your self-worth is low, and then all of a sudden you are an adult now and you need to form new relationships, and that's terrifying because unlike family members, you don't have the security of history. And so you really amp up kind of minimizing your needs to keep someone close, but it just triggers that shame of, oh, I won't be able to keep them around otherwise. And so I feel like when you're in a relationship and you have attachment problems, part of the solution is you have to start doing things that make you fear they're going to leave. And if it's the right person, they're going to stick around. And over time, as you continue to see them sticking around, as you do things that are vulnerable, your brain is going to register that as saying, oh, okay, so maybe I have more freedom of movement than I originally thought. Like I always look at self-worth. This is something that I just want to like shit on other therapists for. You and I agree on this. Affirmations, in some ways are fucking stupid. And the reason they don't work is because you can't cast a spell on yourself by saying, I'm a good person, and all of a sudden you're a good person. You know, your self-worth, I always describe this to clients. Your self-worth is like this thing that's trapped in a room with no windows and the door's locked. And the only way your self-worth is impacted is under the door, a little receipt of your behaviors is slipped under it every day. And your self-worth looks at the behaviors, and if the behaviors are aligned with someone who feels good about themselves, like for instance, you sit down out on the subway even though there's only a couple seats left, right? If it's aligned with someone who feels good about themselves, your self-worth will increase. But if it's aligned with someone who feels bad about themselves, like let's say for instance, you minimize your needs for your partner, and the receipt comes at the end of the day and it's like, oh, he minimized his needs for his partner, your self-worth is going to drop. And that's the only way you can affect your self-worth, really. You can't talk to it directly. There's always a barrier, and the barrier is your behavior.
Yeah, it's new experiences. It's you can't shift something. Like I always use the example of, like, if you're watching TV and there's a lion on the screen that jumps out at you and tries to hit you. Like, because of your past experiences of what you've seen on TV and who knows in person with lions, you know that lions are not safe. Even though that TV box is just a series of red, yellow, and green colors.
Hmm.
And your body will physiologically jump no matter how much you yell at yourself and say it's just a TV box. The only way to get yourself to stop physiologically betraying what you actually want to live up to is to replay that scene over and over again and vulnerably look at the screen with your eyes open so that your body can get that receipt and say, it's safe, it's safe, it's safe. Because that reptilian part of our brain is keeping track, is keeping score. And that's part of the reason why I always say, like, you have to start to get in touch with these new experiences with emotions when it comes to anxious attachment and avoidant. So with anxious attachment, you really got to get in touch with like that fire. Like, to heal anxious attachment, you need more connection with proactive, sincere anger at a low level, at a moderate level, depending on the context. Because with anxious attachment, you're so out of touch with your gut that the only things that you do for yourself feel completely out of tune with yourself. So the more experiences you get where you're like, okay, hey, I'm going to need you to, cook dinner tonight. I'm not actually feeling that overwhelmed, but I'm trying this new thing my therapist taught me, which is putting my needs first. Can you do that for me? And then they say yes. And then you feel guilty. Like, I literally could have done that. Like, I have the ability. But I'm like, no, just let it go. See what happens. Because just like you're saying, you need that new experience of proactive anger and to hear and see that people love that side of you. You don't have to suppress it anymore like you had to do as a child. That's going to heal your anxious attachment.
Yeah, you have to see it happen in real life. You can't like imagine it and go, "Oh, I should feel better now." And that's why affirmations are stupid. If you look in a mirror and say, I'm a good person. I did nothing wrong," it doesn't change how you actually feel. But like you said, I always use the example of imagine you have a neurological disorder where and pretending we're in therapy. So like my back is facing the door, but you're on the other side. And so you have to pass through the room to get out of the therapy office. So in between you and the door is a fake lion. And in your neurological disorder, you've manufactured it seems real. And you come in every week and you're like, I know it's not real. I know it's not real. But I still, when I leave, I walk around the lion. I don't walk straight to the door. And this answer is so simple. You have to walk through the lion to get to the door because that's the only way your mind is going to learn that there's nothing there. If you continue to walk around it and go, I know it's not there, but let me walk around it just in case, you're never going to fully accept that it's not there. It's never going to become real.
Exactly. Like, that's vulnerability. You
Mhm.
have to give that fake lion the capacity to both either hurt you or
Mhm.
not hurt you. If you completely rob the lion of having the ability to hurt you, the fake one, then you'll never know that it's not a real lion
Yeah.
in your relationships and all that. Really, really quick too with fearful attachment. Like, I always feel like fearful attachment gets not a whole lot of attention because they're so complex, right? I would say like the new experience to heal fearful attachment looks like the work of both anxious and avoidant attachment. Sitting in relationships and being consistent, even if it seems like someone is, tricky. Like, it's so tricky. Like, I don't even want to say the wrong thing here because you don't want to go into relationships that will re-traumatize or hurt you. And yet you have to sit in secure relationships that feel dangerous sometimes, like that lion example.
You have to know in your heart that you're okay, even if your body is telling you to run, and that's really hard when it's a lot easier to just avoid. I mean, like you said, it's so funny. To the listeners at home, when we were talking about fearful attachment in the last podcast, afterwards, I went to Jake and I was like, that I actually really resonate with that attachment style because I haven't really thought about it much until you brought it up again in the podcast. But I felt like I kind of grew out of a fearful attachment, partly, just through the sake of through the course of just having my relationship with my wife, because you over time, and I think this is partly what's I feel like people are like, okay, so I have this attachment style, am I doomed for failure? And if you have anxious avoidant or fearful attachment, you're not doomed for failure, but you do have to take these steps into vulnerability to work on it. And I think a lot of times people want to work on it without feeling uncomfortable. And it's like the discomfort is the compass that tells you which direction to walk in. if asking your partner to cook dinner on a day you normally would cook because that is scary to you, then you have just leveled up 1 point in attachment security.
Yep. Sends a new message to the psyche. If it
Yeah.
feels uncomfortable, it's just like a physical workout. That means you're doing something right.
But
Unless it feels like you're dying. Then you know you're like, okay, this is leading to trauma. But yeah,
but
discomfort is a great sign.
back to fearful attachment,
Yeah.
it's something you said that really resonated with me is like someone with fearful attachment, they have this love-hate relationship with just connection itself. You know that you want it, but there's a part of you that feels like it's not catchable.
Mhm.
And some people resign themselves to giving up on that. And the truth is, a lot of people, you ever notice that like there's this common theme in pop psychology where someone goes, I'm not in relationships right now because I'm working on myself. And
Yep.
it's like sometimes that's valid, but other times what you're doing is just avoiding vulnerability and painting it as working on yourself. Because the truth is, most attachment work can only be done in a relationship. It doesn't have to be a romantic one, but it does have to be in some relationship with someone else because it only comes out in that context.
Yeah, exactly. You have to be comfortable facing your fears. And I mean that's true of all attachment. Like one of the common I don't think this is by accident. I haven't read it anywhere, but the common thread between fearful attachment, avoidant attachment, anxious attachment, each of those three words are about fear. You're avoiding something, you're anxious about something, or you're
I'm
fearful, you know?
snapping.
That
It's so
was pretty
good.
cool, yeah. And so like with avoidant attachment too, I really like this example because you're literally moving left and right and avoiding whatever vulnerability feels like. I got dumped. Like that feels hard to say. It's like I didn't really care about the relationship in the first place. You're avoiding the hard feelings. With anxious attachment, it's I don't want to be alone. I don't want someone to push me away, and I'm afraid of abandonment. So I'm going to work extra hard, and you're anxiously hyper vigilant about how do I secure connection. And then with fearful attachment is both. You're both hyper vigilant about this thing that you need, and yet you're also fearful that once you finally obtain it, people will betray you or leave you in the dust. You know, it's just constant. And so anytime you're working on healing attachment wounds across the whole board, you know you and your therapist on a good track if you're really talking about fear throughout the entire conversation.
And that's so well said. I regret snapping because that was a great clip.
No, no, that's the snaps
The
are
snapping
good.
was a reference to our past weekend where we
Oh yeah,
instead of we
Tilbe started that.
we went to stand comedy
Yeah.
and Jacob's wife, instead of clapping, started snapping, and it just kind of took over the whole room, which was funny. But yeah, you're so dead on accurate, and fear is at the root of it. And that's why I think shame is often the second emotion described, because it's fear, but there's a difference between feeling fear when you're standing next to a cliff versus feeling fear in a relationship. Because fear in a relationship is always fear of being ostracized, fear of being abandoned. And that's where shame comes in, because shame at its core is social fear. It's fear of being put on the outskirts of the tribe, and now I have to fend for myself. And so it's deeply ingrained in us as social animals, and also the most fundamental relational fear that exists.
Yeah.
Shame at its core is relationship fear.
Yeah. And I mean, my core belief is that relationships, community, that is to a T the most important thing. So another cool aspect of that is like for anxious attachment, fearful attachment, avoidant attachment, I've sometimes given all of my clients the same advice. So there's the story in the Bible where Moses is leading the Israelites all the way to this Red Sea, and Pharaoh and all of his men are chasing him, and all the people they've been trying to leave the dictatorship of Pharaoh for the past 400 years, and God, they're like, God, where are you? Where are you for your people? So finally, Moses gets these instructions to take these people out and away, and all the way to the Red Sea, and God gives them no idea that he's going to split this Red Sea so that they can actually escape. So I always ask my clients that are Christian, like, what do you think it felt like in that moment as they were standing at the Red Sea and Pharaoh's men were chasing them and God hadn't given Moses the instructions on what to do next? Well, I think That is exactly where the purest form of attachment, secure attachment, can be built, is when you don't seem to have a way and there's no way, and yet there's still pure connection with God. Because the primary issue isn't whether you make it past the Red Sea or not, it's if you feel connected to the people around you and to God. And then safety comes next. Now that you realize that it was not you that parted the Red Sea that made yourself safe, but it was your pure dependency laying on the belly of your creator, that's what saved you. If you came to the Red Sea with boats, you would have developed avoidant attachment and thought it was my preparation that saved me, or anxious attachment, or fearful. And so, anyways, that story always gives me chills, because it's like that had to happen for secure attachment to God in that story to be built.
That makes total sense. And I feel like what you're saying too is like attachment insecurity at its core is a problem. Or, I'm sorry, the solution to attachment insecurity is connection. But the problem is abandonment. You know, when you abandon your inner self, your inner compass that's leading you in the right direction, that's when you start replacing true connection with false connection. You know, that's when you get your, trophy wife instead of a real relationship. That's when you get your relationship with your kids is financial instead of emotional. You're replacing something true and real with something false and in some ways reassuring, but kind of on a lesser level.
Yeah,
And
certainly.
and I have just a random question,
Mhm.
but what's your opinion on God not letting Moses into the promised land because he doubted him?
I have so much opinions about that. I think that
Dick
that's
move, God.
I think that's completely rooted in what we see when it comes to generational curses and things like that. So I think that there was a whole lot of what happened when those people were underneath the rule and dictatorship of Pharaoh. So there's this other part of scripture where I don't necessarily know if this is exactly why, but God told Moses, this is where the disobedience happened. He told Moses to strike the rock at the beginning that would give the people water.
Hmm.
And that was obedience. So he did that. And it's very symbolic, I think, of Pharaoh and how he struck things to get what he needed done. But then by the end of Exodus, God's telling Moses to speak to the rock. And instead of speaking to the rock, not like a slave owner, but like a human, he strikes the rock again. And it goes to show that he was still under the influence of the generation that had escaped slavery. And yet now there's this new generation that had been born that had never experienced what slavery was like. And so the Christian belief is that, similar to Martin Luther King, who didn't get to experience the freedoms of what his work had led to, so it is true that his people as well.
Mm.
Similar to Jesus Christ, who had to die on the cross for our sins, now we get to reap the benefits as the new people, and yet he had to die for it in a sense. And so that is a theme in scripture where you see the leader is actually the one who suffers the most, and then the people that have followed the leader then go on to reap the benefits.
Wow, you had that locked in. That was good.
I love that stuff. I wanted to do one other topic though
Yeah.
before we moved over, because this will be a shorter episode than usual. But at the practical level, like career and dating with attachment, I got a few people that messaged me online and saying, well, if I have anxious attachment, how do I date well? If I have avoidant attachment, how do I date well? Why do I keep ending up with avoiding people if I'm anxious? I
Here's
don't know.
here-
You start us off.
Here's why we will stay in business for eternity. Because our minds are attracted towards what's familiar over what's pleasant. So, someone with anxious attachment is going to be attracted towards someone with avoidant attachment because it is familiar, because it does keep them kind of pursuing. And in their most basic fundamental level, pursuing is what they do. And they're actually uncomfortable in a position where they're not pursuing their mate. And I think that ties back to just the general understanding of the origins of attachment, which is if you have an anxious attachment style, it comes from the fact that when you were an infant, you had to pursue comfort as opposed to it being readily available to you. So of course, when you're an adult, avoidantly attached people are going to provide that same familiarity that you're going to gravitate towards too. So what I would say is be aware of the things that sound good, that feel good immediately, but really just help you continue to avoid the discomfort that you really need to feel in order deepen a relationship. You know, your instincts are not great in a moment when your awareness is at the level that it's at. You know, if you do the work and you understand, okay, I am gravitated towards that person, but I would be suspicious of why. Ask yourself, what about this person makes me want to go towards them? And if you can't think of a concrete answer and it's just a feeling, I would say ask yourself, is it because that feeling is familiar? And if the answer is yes, then maybe run for the fucking hills. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay,
No,
so
I agree though. I
you
think
agree?
yeah, I mean when it comes to that, you're going to what's familiar, right? And I kind of hinted at this kind of at the beginning too, but with anxious attachment, you're constantly minimizing your own needs. So when it comes to dating and you're with someone who's avoidant, what does the avoidant person do? They minimize their own needs, of course, but even more so, they're going to minimize the heck out of your own needs. So if you're someone with anxious attachment and you're wondering why you keep ending up with avoidant people, one of the answers that I found to be really helpful is that you've got to start taking your own needs seriously. Otherwise, it's going to keep on happening. Because, like you said, familiarity is what feels normal to us. And whenever we're in a relationship with an avoidant person, that sort of unavailable person starts to feel like this puzzle that's exciting to solve, right? It's like this chemistry starts to get built because you're recreating the environment that you grew up with where your needs were minimized and you coped and found pleasure by finding your needs met by helping other people. So, in order to work towards having a healthy dating life as someone who's anxiously attached, you got to stop minimizing your own needs. And you got to stop making such a huge deal about this whole dating process, too, I would say, especially if you have anxious attachment and ADHD, because now you're hyper focused on the relationship. Now you got limerence all in the picture. So, if you have anxious attachment, dating can feel like severe trauma to you because, one, you don't want to get rejected and abandoned because that just triggers all the pain from your childhood. But you also overassume how much pain it would cause if you rejected somebody else because now you're kicking them out of heaven and you think, oh my gosh, I could never do that. So now dating starts to feel like a minefield where you're either rejected and alone or a monster that hurt somebody else. So really what you have to do with dating as an anxiously attached person is lower the stakes. Realize that your instincts around dating are amplified. It's not truth, it's not reality, and that this is a lower stake situation than you think. And there's more steps to that, but that's what I would start to say.
To add on to that though, because the lower stakes thing is interesting. I feel like anxiously attached people, they're often saying things like, you know, I feel this pressure with this person I'm dating to know where it's going. And I'm like, well, how many dates have you been on? They're like 3. And I'm like, well, why do you feel so much pressure? And ultimately, an anxiously attached person feels an inappropriate amount of responsibility over someone else's emotional state. And so it's important to remind them, like, hey, you are not responsible for what happens to their emotional state if this doesn't work for you. You know, this is the point of dating. You're entering into this with the understanding that it might not work out. And if that is not the way you're approaching this, then you need to remind yourself where you are in this process.
Yeah.
You're treating it like you're in 5 years into marriage,
right
when you barely know this person.
I feel like you're yelling at me.
Is that you?
Yeah.
I mean, that's me too.
Yeah.
You don't think I'm talking about me? I'm
Yeah,
always
no, I'm
talking
just
about
kidding.
me. Whenever I talk about
No,
dead
but
bodies,
I wish that we had this conversation when I was like 13.
I mean, I wish someone told me. I wish I told me when I was 13.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, you feel like the stakes are so high, and then you feel like, wow. So of course, dating starts to feel like you're either all in, or this person is God and they just kicked you out of heaven.
The second I stopped being interested in someone, apologies to whoever I dated in the past, was the second I broke up with them because I felt like, how could I even for a second like eat an ice cream cone next to a person pretending I'm something I'm not? But the truth is
Same.
I think we're uncomfortable with the ambiguity because we feel so responsible for their emotional state, when in reality we're not.
Man, so similar.
That's the
thing. Parallel lives. I would also add, I guess, dating, because I don't want to leave out the avoidantly attached people. When you're I don't know if you have any initial thoughts. I have somewhere I'm going, but I haven't formulated it yet.
You don't have anywhere you're going. That's what I'm picking up.
You're too good at reading people. No, I have no idea where I'm. Well, here's the thing with avoiding attachment in your dating. If you get knocked down, you just got to get back up. Like, I'm trying to do a Rocky quote.
I like how
You just got to keep going. When you get knocked down, it's not how hard you get hit, it's how hard you hit and keep going.
I'm scared, all right? I'm scared. Do you remember that scene? You know, see, you're referencing a movie, and then I'm joining in with you, and you don't even know that I'm joining in with
stuff.
you.
I just watch other people quote movies, and I quote people quoting movies.
Oh my God, you're like the anti-Wes. But
yeah, Wes hates me.
it's. I mean, I think that it's just to go back to anxiously attached people. I feel like anxiously attached people, they are constantly scanning other people's faces and waiting for the shoe to drop because they're expecting it to drop. And in a lot of ways, I think anxiously attached people, you want to talk about people who self-sabotage? Anxiously attached people self-sabotage all the time because there's a part of them that believes they deserve shit to fall apart. And so they kind of instigate shit falling apart. And then as it falls apart, they go, oh my God, see, it's all falling apart. I told you it would fall apart. And it's all because they can't sit with the possibility that things might be good. You know, we actually might have a good relationship here, but the fact that there's even a little bit of gray, I just can't sit with that, so let's just destroy it.
Yeah, and then you're also thinking like 6 steps ahead about how this could go wrong. So you're living in the headspace, you're on a date with someone, and let's say that that person just is neutral and they're trying to figure out if they like you. If you have thought a million steps in advance of like how you can screw this up, they're going to make a sarcastic joke about, oh, hey, yeah, of course you would think that. And you're like, oh my gosh, they're rejecting me. What do you mean? Like you can't even sit in a good joke with someone because you're so ready for rejection that you rob yourself from ever experiencing acceptance. So one of the ways to make sure that you're dating well with anxious attachment is pause, like before you respond to someone else, because that's going to free you up to actually analyze the situation and see what's actually going on. Because your gut reaction is going to be, let me meet their needs, or wait, how do I make sure, are they smiling? Oh, I'm good now. Or are they frowning? And then you're going to go in your car and analyze, like, what did I say? Oh my gosh, did I ruin the date? But really, you need to become the pole of acceptance so that you can, from that high standing ground, start to dictate reality yourself while also allowing healthy influence from other people. And then there's flip with avoidant attachment. You want to make sure that you're able to, I think people with avoidant attachment do pretty well with dating at the beginning because they're cool, they don't care as much. People are kind of drawn to that. So they do well at the beginning, but then later on, they think, oh my gosh, this guy's touching all my stuff. This person is doing all this. They're all over me and I don't want them in my space, and you want your independence. So with avoidant attachment, I guess the only tip I would say is start allowing people to touch your stuff. Start allowing people to get more integrated into your life.
That'd be a good name for a podcast, the Stuff Touchers. But you make a good point. Like, I feel like avoidantly attached people, like, they start off really good on the early side of dating because they have this I don't care attitude. But still at their core is this fear that they're not worth being cared about, you know? And they're not worth being cared about once you discover that there's nothing really to them after you get to know them a little bit more. And that's their fear. And the longer you're with someone who's avoidantly attached, the more they become fearful that you're going to go, wait, there's nothing really under this hood.
Yeah.
And so that's when they start to pull back. And it's all going on in their heads because at the core, it's I'm just not worth being cared about in this way. And that's why they're bad. They're not as good in relationships that are longer term.
That's exactly right. Because, I mean, the most common phrase of someone who's avoidantly attached in a relationship that's ending is, I just don't think I can give you what you want. And that's actually, a lot of people think they just are making that up as an excuse, and maybe there is some like cop out with that.
No,
but
they believe that.
Truly, they believe I can't give you what you want, because once an avoidant person has been in a relationship long enough, all of the novelty, the objects, the money, whatever they could give you starts to slowly become less novel. And the only thing that can surface now at this point is their inherent worth as a human. And like you said, the avoidant person feels like there's nothing to offer once they're truly just their genuine selves. So they have to create this acceptance of that and realize that's the best gift you could give somebody, which is yourself. All the money and stuff, that's the icing on the cake, but you are the cake. I love that analogy. That's why I use it all the time.
No, it's a great analogy. And when I work with these people, I think part of what I get to the point where I've worked with them enough, I'm like, I'm looking at you and I'm seeing more than enough. So if you're not feeling enough, that's a you problem, not a what's in you problem. There's enough in you.
Exactly.
You're just worried there isn't because at some point in your life, someone made you feel like there wasn't. But that's not yours to take. It was never yours to take, so you can just give it back at any time. It's easier said than done. But
yeah, but
anyway,
like, hey, show up to session without doing homework. Boom, A+.
Done.
Yeah. Wow. Right on the kind of money.
Good, because I need a pee break anyway.
All right. Attachment episode 2.0. We're going to do 3.0 in the future. 5. We're going to be on like 20.0 one day. So
we'll just become an attachment.
Smash that subscribe button.
Like, subscribe,
keep
comment.
getting up, fall forward.
All right, we'll take a break for 2 seconds.
Let's go.
Okay, I got it really quickly. Be right back.